Riley's last known contact with anybody would be shortly after 9:30 when he was kicked out of Luke Bryant's 32 Bridge Bar on Broadway. And his disappearance on March 8th has left his family and law enforcement begging the public for help. But the big questions left to be asked while his family and law enforcement search for answers are: why was he left alone that night? What was he possibly on? Is this just another indication that we have a growing problem with Greek culture at our universities? And you can just take a wild guess right now at what University of Missouri fraternity was shut down in 2019. And should we be concerned that the last people to see Riley alive were homeless? Well, let's talk about it.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
Riley was last seen by his fraternity members just after 9:30 on March 8th while attending a spring formal. On March 9th after 1 p.m., he was reported missing. Footage shows Riley walking in the wrong direction on 3rd Avenue. You can see footage of him crashing or falling on Church Street as he stumbles down Church Street towards Gay Street. The last images of Riley were him crossing 1st Avenue towards Gay Street, heading towards James Robertson Bridge, where his cell last pinged. The biggest question is what caused Riley to be alone that night. Now, one report had said that when Riley was removed from that establishment, his fraternity brothers were trying to pay the check and couldn't get to the exit in time before Riley had walked off. Other reports had said that there was security footage in that establishment that shows Riley being removed from that facility with one of his fraternity brothers right beside him, and at the door he pats him on the back and then turns around and goes to join the rest of the group, while Riley is left on his own in the middle of the city taking the wrong steps home. But this, at the end of the day, is an indication into the problem we have with Greek culture. Is it not a pay-for-friendship organization? Because you would think that if a group of individuals were so tight that they would enter one place as a group and leave one place as a group. But quite often when you're put in a difficult scenario, when you have had to pay for friends, you will often find out you have no one to turn to. Now, it hasn't been quite clear on if they abandoned him or if they were just separated. But one would hope that a group of college students who are going to graduate and become managers and supervisors would at least have the common sense to make a little bit of a plan before going out that night. Because it would have been too easy to designate one person to not consume anything, and that individual's sole job is to make sure everybody enters together and leaves together. And in emergency situations like this, that individual would be able to walk with the other to make sure they got home okay. But what on earth was Riley on that night? You can see from that security camera footage, he is very clearly inebriated. Now, whether that was from drinks or something else, that hasn't been determined yet, and I would hope that law enforcement has questioned all those members of that fraternity on what they did before Riley was removed from the bar. Now, early reports indicated that Luke Bryant's bar was going to be investigated, given what they saw in the surveillance footage of him exiting that area. Because the law states that an establishment cannot serve anything to anybody who is noticeably intoxicated. And it is quite clear that Riley was at the very least heavily intoxicated. They would later issue a statement stating that while Riley was in that establishment, he had purchased 1 drink and 2 bottles of water. And I don't personally see how 1 drink and 2 bottles of water could leave an individual in that condition. Now, a family member had said that they had went to other establishments before that one, and that was one of the reasons why Riley got turned around. But generally speaking, when a group of individuals are going out, they usually consume beverages at the same rate. So what happened to Riley to get him in that condition that didn't happen to the other fraternity members? But are we not seeing this as an indication of a larger problem within our universities? I have yet to understand the exact reason why we need fraternities and sororities in our colleges. We hear stories of multiple incidences like this at all our universities all across the country. What is the justifiable reason to have an organization that does nothing but cause problems and requires people to pay for friendship? Now, it was as recently as February of 2023, Phi Gamma Delta had an incident that resulted in several people being charged with the crime. You can see in this footage that they were forcing individuals to consume high amounts of beverages, which resulted in an individual being left blind and mute without the ability to speak, due to the amount of alcohol in his system. Now, between the time of 2018 to 2022, the University of Missouri has had 15 total incidences involving substances or some type of abuse. Now, 6 were just based off consumption alone, 12 were from some type of abuse, and 3 of those incidences involved both. And if you haven't guessed it by now, yes, Sigma Chi in 2019 was forced to shut its doors at the University of Missouri for some particularly brutal incidences of abuse and consumption. Now, something I thought was odd was the police had said an individual reported seeing him fall down in a bush, and it just so happens that that individual is homeless. Now, before anybody accuses me of degrading these individuals, I am not. The reports I have read said that the homeless individuals in that encampment have been 100% cooperating with authorities. And also there has been no bank activity on his card, so nobody has stolen his wallet. But the last ping from his cell phone was in that area, and I would wonder how hard law enforcement looked into those individuals. Because it's not like they have a track record of making the best decisions all the time. Of course, we're not saying they absolutely did it, but it should certainly be worth looking at. Now, given the way the police are searching for Riley, it's safe to assume they believe he ended up in the river, and they have been using helicopters and boats and sonar to try to locate him. And so far, nothing's turned up. But I can't help but circle back to the fact that if he was with people who actually legitimately cared for him, then they would have ensured that he would have not left that establishment alone. And before anybody makes a statement saying, well, he was kicked out and he was separated, I have been in multiple scenarios like this, and not at any point in time, whether somebody was being kicked out or not, did myself or someone from the group realize what was going on. So somebody could have very easily left with him and ensured that he got home okay. And it is still very odd to me that everybody was able to maintain themselves to a degree while consuming stuff, and yet Riley was removed from the situation. Just to me personally at this point, that leads me to believe he had either taken something or he was slipped something. We don't know that to be a fact right now, but it is certainly something worth talking about. Now, as always, if you see any of these things differently, you can let me know down in the comments below. Other than that, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being here. Y'all stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next one.